Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer with the podcast from Moshe and Israel. The idea of holiness is among the most universal in the history of human culture. We find it almost everywhere in one form or another. It is almost invariably associated with religion, as almost anyone would expect. It is usually to be found in specific places or acts, such as the central region of a temple or at the climax of some particular ceremony. We tend to expect holiness to be part of such things, and we take it for granted that the term is indeed appropriate for whatever it is describing. But when asked, almost nobody can actually define the word holy. When challenged to really give it some meaning, most of us fall back on equally elusive words like spiritual or sanctify or something along those lines. It is probably a safe bet that most of us haven't the foggiest idea of what we mean by the word holy. The well-known book, The Idea of the Holy by Rudolf Otto of about 100 years ago defined holy as numinous, a term he likely coined himself to express a concept that very possibly cannot be expressed. It is probably best left alone with an aura of mystery surrounding it, like the cloud that enveloped Mount Sinai when the Torah was given. But it sure would be nice if we could actually explain it in some way. Probably the best place to start such a hopeless project is the Bible. The word comes up all over the place in the Bible. In one form or another, it appears hundreds of times. The three-letter Hebrew word is spelled in English Kodesh, Kodesh. A variation of this is the well-known Jewish ceremony ushering in the Shabbat meals called Kiddush. The reason for this name is that one of the blessings recited during the ceremony blesses God for, quote, sanctifying the Shabbat. Jews around the world have recited this blessing for ages, faithfully believing in the words, even if they don't quite understand exactly what they mean. That's the way it is with holy. It just is, and we leave it at that. But we are going to try to do a little better than that. Despite all the seemingly unconnected and even contradictory possible meanings of holy that may be found in the Bible, we are going to attempt to zero in on one particular use that really hits the spot. This is by no means the exclusive meaning of holy, as there are so many other examples that could have been used that may have revealed some other meaning. But being as we've staked our claim, and being as people in general probably wouldn't mind an actual definition of this elusive term, let's see if we can find one. This week's Parsha is called Terumah. That word means contribution, a key introductory term for the entire Parsha. The entire Parsha deals with the plan for the construction of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, which was built to house the Ark of the Covenant of biblical and Hollywood fame. There were all kinds of other things in the Mishkan, many of which are described in the Parsha. There are the beams to make the structure of the building and the surrounding courtyard. There are the curtains to separate one section of the Mishkan from another. There are the various items that were contained within the Mishkan, such as the table for the ceremonial bread, the candelabra which provided the only light in the dim interior of the structure, a couple of altars for various offerings, and a whole slew of utensils that were used in one part of the Mishkan or another. Great detail is given to the huge skins and tapestries that were used to cover the Mishkan structure, which was its only roof. There is so much detail in all this that it can be a bit daunting. It is really a matter of trying to describe a visual item in words when a drawing or a picture would work so much better. But this was the best way at the time to describe the Mishkan, so it had to do. Even with all the detail, we really don't get all that clear of an idea as to what all these things actually looked like. Many attempts have been made to give a pretty clear impression of what the Mishkan actually looked like when it was in operation. Though we do have a fairly good idea of its appearance, we really cannot be 100% confident that this is truly what it was. The fact is that the Mishkan vanished about 3,000 years ago and never reappeared. It was replaced shortly after its disappearance by the first of two temples in Jerusalem. These considerably more elaborate structures were modeled after Mishkan, but in actuality, they were much more impressive and complex. They were actual buildings with solid walls and roofs made of stone and wood. They were huge for the time and much more impressive to look at. But in basic function, they all served the same purpose, to be a home for the Ark of the Covenant. Judaism has a tradition that the Ark was almost always in either the Mishkan or the temple. There is another tradition that the ark itself vanished with the destruction of the first temple. This means, surprisingly, that the second temple did not contain the Ark of the Covenant, which is odd considering that this was the express purpose of the temples and of the Mishkan. But such are the whims of history. This central shrine, which existed for hundreds of years in the central spot in Jerusalem until it was destroyed by the Romans, did not contain the Ark of the Covenant. Nobody knows for sure when it actually vanished, whether it was during the destruction of the first temple or sometime before. The description of the destruction of that temple says nothing about anybody actually destroying the ark or making off with it. It simply vanished from history without any trace. It happens that even in the Bible, the ark rarely gets mentioned once it found its final biblical home in the core of the first temple. It seems like it was installed there with great ceremony to convey the holiness of the occasion and then forgotten. It is mentioned so rarely after this that it is difficult not to suspect that it lost its importance somehow. This is in contrast to the hundreds of years before this when it was housed in the Mishkan or in a temporary location. During those ancient times, one gets the impression that the entire Israelite religion revolved around this rectangular box with its elaborate cover. It would not be an exaggeration to say that it was the holiest item in the Bible. The ark itself is first mentioned in this week's Parsha. It is most commonly referred to as the, quote, Ark of the Testimony, since the only things that it contained were the tablets upon which were inscribed the Ten Commandments. It is the first thing described in the list of items that constituted the Mishkan. It is clearly the most important, but even here it earns no more an elaborate description than any of the other things. It seems to be nothing more than a rectangular box made of wood, which was plated both inside and out with gold. It was carried by poles that were attached to it through rings on the side. The most detail of the ark is found in its cover, which contains scriptural images of Cherubim, which were angelic-like beings. These images rose up from the cover and were the focal point for anyone who was able to actually see the ark in its place. The ark is frequently referred to in both biblical and rabbinic literature as, quote, the Holy Ark. In fact, Jews have a long-standing tradition to refer to the large cabinet in the front of every synagogue that holds the Torah scrolls as the Holy Ark. It is meant to be a kind of replica of the original Ark of the Covenant, though no synagogue ark can really claim to approach the holiness or significance of the original version. But they obviously have something in common in that there is no accident that they share a common name. The question is, what is this common element that makes them both holy to one degree or another? We have some clues from the descriptions given in this week's Parsha. First is that the Mishkan itself was initially referred to as a, quote, mikdash, a variation of the word kodesh, and thus a place of holiness. Second is the layout of the Mishkan. There was a large altar in the courtyard outside of the central tent. Within the tent itself were two distinct areas separated by a special curtain. The outer room was called the Kodesh, meaning essentially sanctuary or holy space. The inner chamber, which housed nothing other than the Ark of the Covenant, was called Kodesh HaKodashim, or Holy of Holies. This room clearly had the highest level of whatever it is that made something holy. It was so holy that it had to be separated from the room next door, which was pretty holy to begin with. Following the somewhat detailed description of the cherubim, the Torah slips in a single verse that tells us what this whole thing was all about. Quote, "And I shall commune with you and communicate to you from above the cover between the cherubim that is on the ark of the testimony, all that I command you concerning the Israelites." It is clear from everywhere else in the Torah that God could speak to a person virtually anywhere. Why this particular exact location was designated as the place that God would regularly communicate to the Israelites is left unclear. Nevertheless, this was the place that was selected. Its location on earth was not permanent, as the entire Mishkan was portable and was frequently taken down and re-erected elsewhere as the Israelites traveled around the desert. It wasn't the location per se that mattered, as much as what happened in the secluded inner chamber. It was God speaking to them that made this room and this space holy. Nothing else could account for the supreme holiness of everything described in this parsha as holy. After all the dust clears, holiness is the presence of God in whatever form it takes. It may come through a thought or an awareness. It may come from an action that somehow evokes God's reality in the minds of those who witness it. It may be an idea or a book of ideas, poems that bring God to the emotions of those who recite them, a prayer or a blessing. It could be any of those things, since they all cause those who are present or taking part to sense that God is somehow there. But the most direct form of holiness, the Holy of Holies, was when a person actually communicated with God in some way. This supreme state of awareness, its extreme form of prophecy, was and is the epitome of the human spiritual experience. There is nothing else that resembles it in any way, shape, or form. It is unique among human states of being, for it is the singular time when a person is able to know that there is something to reality other than reality. There is God, and God bridges the infinite gap and speaks with us. If this isn't holy, it is hard to imagine what is. Shabbat Shalom.